Parents thought it would be right to leave me in another state. "You're a burden," they said and drove away. I was alone. 5 years later, when Dad found out about my inheritance, I always knew my parents didn't like me. They tolerated me. Barely. I wasn't the golden child, the obedient son who followed every rule without question. I pushed back, had my own opinions, and refused to be the person they wanted me to be. That made me a problem. And in my family, when something is a problem, my parents find a way to get rid of it. I was 16, and summer vacation was ending. Most kids were dreading going back to school, but I was looking forward to it. Anything was better than being home. Lately, my parents had been acting even colder than usual. My mom barely spoke to me unless she had to, and my dad only acknowledged me when I didn't do something exactly the way he wanted. I figured they were just in one of their moods. I had learned a long time ago not to ask questions. Then one morning, my dad told me to pack a small bag. "We're taking a trip. Just a few days. Pack light," he said. That should have been my first red flag. My parents weren't the type to take sudden trips, especially not ones that included me. But I didn't question it. I packed a few clothes, my charger, and some essentials. When I came downstairs, my bag was gone. "Mom already packed for you," my dad said. I should have known something was off right then. We drove for hours. Out of the city, past the suburbs, and into the countryside. The further we went, the more uneasy I felt. My parents didn't talk to me the entire drive. My mom stared out the window, and my dad focused on the road like he couldn't wait to get where we were going. We finally stopped in some tiny rural town that looked like it hadn't changed in 50 years. My dad pulled into a dirt parking lot next to an old, rundown motel. The sign was half lit, the paint peeling off the walls. My mom got out first. My dad followed. I went to grab my bag, but there was nothing there. I frowned. "Where's my stuff?" My mom turned to face me. Arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "We left it at home. You won't need it." My dad didn't even look at me. "We're done, David. You're a burden. We're not going to tolerate you anymore." At first, I thought I misheard. Then my mom said it. "You don't want to listen, you don't want to be part of this family, fine. Figure things out yourself." I laughed, waiting for the punchline. They weren't serious. They couldn't be. But then they got back in the car. My dad started the engine, my mom shut the door, and before I could even react, they were reversing out of the parking lot. I ran after them. "Are you kidding me? You're actually leaving me here?" My dad didn't even glance in the rearview mirror. They just kept driving. I stood there, watching the dust settle behind them, heart pounding. I wanted to believe this was some kind of test. That they'd come back in an hour, tell me this was a lesson in responsibility, and we'd go home. But deep down, I knew better. They were gone. I was alone. I checked my pockets. My phone. My wallet. About $500 in my bank account. That was it. I had two choices. I could call them, beg them to come back. Or I could figure things out on my own. I chose the second option. There was no point in going back to people who didn't want me. If this was how things were going to be, fine. I'd make it work. I found a cheap hostel nearby and paid for a bed. It wasn't much, just a bunk in a shared room with strangers, but it was a place to sleep. The next morning, I got up and started looking for a job. No diploma, no real skills, but I was strong and willing to work. After a lot of rejections, I found a construction site looking for an extra pair of hands. The pay was low, the work was exhausting, but I took it. Days passed. No calls. No texts. Nothing. I wasn't surprised. And that was just the beginning. The first year was brutal. I worked construction during the day, took odd jobs whenever I could, and barely scraped by. I lived in a cheap hostel at first, then in a cramped apartment with two other guys who barely spoke English. Every dollar mattered. I went days eating nothing but rice and instant noodles, but I never once thought about calling my parents. By the second year, things started to change. I learned electrical work on site, and one of the foremen saw potential in me. He taught me skills that paid better, and soon I wasn't just hauling materials, I was wiring buildings. The money got better. I moved to a small studio apartment, still in a rough part of town, but it was mine. By year 3, I had enough experience to get licensed. That's when I moved to Los Angeles. My company paid well, and I started saving real money. I got my own car, a decent one-bedroom apartment, and I finally felt like I had a future. By year 4, I had no doubt I had built a life for myself, completely on my own. I traveled for work, took on big projects, and started thinking about starting my own contracting business. The only family I stayed in touch with were my grandparents. My parents and sisters? Nothing. And I liked it that way. Then, in my 5th year away, everything changed. It was a regular evening. I had just gotten home from a long shift when my phone rang. It was my grandfather. I picked up, expecting the usual small talk. But his voice was different. "She's gone, David," he said. I didn't need to ask who. I just sat there, gripping my phone. "She passed in her sleep last night," he continued. "No pain. Just peaceful." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. My grandmother, the only person in my family who had ever shown me kindness, was gone. "When's the funeral?" I asked. 2 days from now," he said. Then softer, "I know you're busy." I was. My company was in the middle of a huge project. Taking time off on such short notice was impossible. But it still felt wrong. "I can't make it," I said, guilt crawling up my throat. My grandfather didn't hesitate. "She wouldn't want you to risk your job, David. She'd be proud of you for working hard." I swallowed. "You sure?" "I'm sure." It hurt, but I accepted it. The funeral came and went without me. I spent the day at work, trying not to think about it. That night, my grandfather called again. "They were all there," he said, meaning my parents and sisters. "Your father, he had some things to say." I already knew it wasn't going to be good. "He called you stupid. Said you were too selfish to come. That you were just proving what a disappointment you are." I clenched my jaw. I shouldn't have been surprised. Even now, after 5 years of silence, my father still found ways to put me down. "What did you say?" I asked. My grandfather exhaled. "I told him to shut up." I let out a short laugh. I hadn't heard my grandfather stand up to my dad like that before. "You did?" "Yes. And I'll tell you what else, I'm proud of you, David. You got away from them. You built something for yourself. That's more than he ever did." I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. But that wasn't the last surprise. A month later, I got a call from a lawyer. At first, I thought it was some kind of scam. But then he mentioned my grandmother's name. "She left you something," he said. My heart pounded. "What do you mean?" "There's an inheritance. Your grandmother specified in her will that it goes to you. $500,000. I almost dropped the phone. She had never mentioned anything about this. I knew my grandparents weren't poor, but I never expected something like this. "She wanted you to have it," the lawyer continued. "Your grandfather can explain more, but I need you to come in to sign paperwork." I sat there stunned. $500,000. Just like that. But before I could even process it, I got another call. Not from my grandfather. From my father. I stared at the screen, my stomach turning. After 5 years of silence, I suddenly wasn't a burden anymore. I let it ring. I knew ignoring them wouldn't make them go away. My parents were the kind of people who believed they were always right, who thought that no matter what they did, the world still owed them something. I finally checked my messages the next morning. "Dad, we need to talk. UOWES. You're our son." I read it twice. Owe them? For what? For abandoning me? For treating me like I was disposable? For leaving me in another state with nothing but a few $100 and expecting me to fail? I wasn't going to argue over text. If they wanted to talk, fine. But I was going to be the one setting the terms. 5 years. That's how long it had been since I last saw my parents' house. Driving up that street again was like stepping into a past life. Same cracked driveway, same peeling paint, same neglected lawn. Except now, it looked even worse. There was another car parked in front, a cheap, old sedan I didn't recognize. When I knocked, it took a full minute before my mother answered. She looked different. Older. More tired. But the moment she saw me, her face shifted into something smug, like she thought my presence meant I had finally come to make things right. "So you finally came to your senses," she said, stepping aside. I walked in, taking in the scene. The house was crowded. My older sister Emily sat on the couch, arms crossed, looking annoyed. Her husband was next to her, staring at his phone like he wanted to be anywhere else. A toddler, a boy, probably 2 or 3, was playing on the floor with some old plastic toys. Then there was my father, standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching me like I was an intruder. No one looked happy to see me. I leaned against the wall. "All right. I'm here. What do you want?" My father scoffed. "What do we want? David, you're our son. Family takes care of each other." I stared at him. "Did that only start being a rule after you abandoned me?" Emily sighed like I was exhausting her. "Oh my God, are we really still talking about that? It was 5 years ago." I let out a short laugh. "You're right. And in those 5 years, none of you called. None of you cared. But suddenly I have money, and now I'm family again?" "We raised you," my father said. "For 16 years. You think that was free?" I blinked. "You're telling me I owe you for existing?" He stepped forward. "We put a roof over your head. We fed you. We paid for your school, your clothes. You had kids. That was your choice." I shot back. "Nobody forced you to be parents. You don't get to act like you did this all on your own." My mother cut in. "You wouldn't have survived without what we gave you first." I let that sink in for a second. Then I shook my head. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You treated me like a problem my entire life. Then, when I didn't turn out the way you wanted, you dumped me in another state like I was garbage. You never called, never cared if I lived or died. And now you think I owe you because I didn't fail? You wouldn't have made it without the start we gave you," my father insisted. I scoffed. "The start you gave me? You mean the part where you abandoned me with nothing?" My father's jaw clenched. "Watch your tone." I laughed. "Or what? You'll kick me out again?" I gestured around the house. "Oh wait, you can't. Because I don't need you anymore." Silence. Emily shifted uncomfortably. Her husband kept his eyes on his phone. Even the toddler seemed to sense the tension. Then my father changed tactics. "Look, you have more than enough money now. Meanwhile, we're struggling. Your sister and her family live with us because they have nowhere else to go. The right thing to do would be to share." "The right thing to do?" I repeated. "You mean like how you shared with me when I had nothing?" Emily finally spoke up. "David, come on. I have a kid. We can barely afford groceries some weeks. Are you seriously going to let your own nephew suffer when you have $500,000? I turned to her. "You didn't speak to me for 5 years. You chose to cut me out just like Mom and Dad did. And now that I have money, you expect me to care?" Emily looked away. She didn't have an answer for that. My mother stepped in again. "If you don't help us, we'll tell everyone what kind of son you really are." I went still. I turned to her. "Are you threatening me?" She lifted her chin. "People will know that you refused to help your struggling family. That you turned your back on us when we needed you. Do you really want people thinking that about you?" I stared at her for a long moment. Then I smiled. "You know what? Tell whoever you want," I said. "Because I don't care." My father's face darkened. You're being selfish. No, I said calmly. I'm finally putting myself first. Something you never let me do. I turned to leave. Then I stopped. I glanced around the house, at the peeling walls, the overcrowded rooms, the air of quiet desperation. I turned back to them. You know, you were right about one thing. Family does take care of each other. I gestured toward Emily, her husband, their kid. That's why I'm going to help. Hope flickered across their faces. Then I continued. I'm going to buy a house. A big one. Somewhere nice. And I'm going to move Grandpa in with me. And Emily? If she wants to come, with her husband and son, they're welcome too. Emily's head snapped up in shock. My parents' expressions twisted in confusion. But you too? I looked directly at my parents. You can stay right here. My mother paled. You wouldn't. I smiled. I would. Because I don't want you to be a burden to me. Their mouths opened, but I was already walking away. They had made their choices. Now, I was making mine. I walked out of that house feeling lighter than I had in years. I was in control for the first time. I didn't just shut them down, I gave them a taste of their own medicine. They left me when I needed them. Now I was leaving them behind. But I wasn't done. That night, my grandfather called. I heard what you did, he said, amusement in his voice. I grinned. You think I went too far? Not far enough, he said. Your father's been calling me all night, ranting about how ungrateful you are. He thought I'd take his side. And I told him the same thing I told you, I'm proud of you. Hearing that meant more than I expected. Then my grandfather stopped. But there's something you need to know. My stomach tightened. What? He sighed. They're more desperate than you think. I frowned. What do you mean? I wasn't going to tell you, he admitted. But after what they pulled today, I think you deserve to know. You're in serious financial trouble. Your father made some bad investments a few years ago. Lost a lot of money. That's why Emily and her family are living with them. They can't afford a place of their own. I blinked. Wait. Are you saying they need me more than I thought? They need you, David, he confirmed. That's why they're trying so hard to manipulate you. They're drowning and they're hoping you'll bail them out. I sat back and let that sink in. So this wasn't just about greed, it was about survival. They weren't just hoping for a handout, they needed one. And I had just slammed the door in their faces. Good. But then my grandfather said something that made me stop. There's one more thing. Emily came to see me after you left. That caught me off guard. Emily? She wanted to talk. He hesitated. She was upset. Not just about the money, about everything. She told me she regretted cutting you out. I frowned. You believe her? I think she realizes how much of her life she's let them control, he said. And I think she's scared. I hadn't expected that. The next night I got a text. From Emily, can we talk? I debated ignoring it. But after what my grandfather said, I decided to see what she had to say. We met at a diner, just the two of us. She looked different without our parents around, less defensive, more insecure. She stirred her coffee in silence before finally speaking. I deserved what you said to me yesterday. I didn't argue. She sighed. Look, I was angry with you for a long time. When Mom and Dad left you, they told me it was your fault. That you were ungrateful. That you didn't care about the family. I believed them. I clenched my jaw. And now? Her eyes flickered with remorse. Now I see they only told me what they wanted me to believe. They needed me to be on their side. And I let them turn me against you. I exhaled, my anger easing slightly. Why are you telling me this now? She hesitated. Because I don't want to be like them. I studied her. She seemed sincere. Then she surprised me. I'm leaving, she said. I blinked. What? She nodded. Me, Jake, and our son. We're done living with them. After what I saw yesterday, After hearing what they said to you, I realized I don't want them in my child's life like that. I don't want him to grow up thinking that family means obligation and guilt. For the first time, I saw that Emily was trapped, too. Maybe not in the same way I had been, but still trapped under our parents' control. And now she wanted out. "Where are you going?" I asked. She hesitated. I don't know yet. I took a deep breath. "You meant it when you said you didn't want to be like them?" "Yes." "Then come live with me." Her eyes widened. "David, I'm serious," I said. "I told them I was going to buy a house and move Grandpa in. That offer is open to you. But not to them." She stared at me, emotion flickering across her face. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I'd like that," she whispered. The next day, Emily packed her things and left. When my parents realized she was really gone, they lost their minds. My father called me again, but this time I answered. "You took her from US," he yelled. "No," I said calmly. "You drove them away, just like you did me." My mother's voice came over the phone. "You're destroying this family." "No," I corrected. "I'm saving the only parts worth saving." And then, for the last time, I hung up. I never looked back. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of my new home and watched the sun set over the hills. It was everything I never thought I'd have. A big house outside Los Angeles with room for all of us. My grandfather had the master suite on the first floor, Emily and Jake had their own room upstairs with their son, and I finally had a home that actually felt like mine. It wasn't just a house. It was a new beginning. And the best part? My parents weren't in it. A life without them. At first, I half expected my father to show up and ask for another chance, but he never did. Maybe he finally realized he had no power over me. Or maybe his pride wouldn't let him. Either way, he and my mother were still in their old house, fighting. Emily had told me they tried to guilt her into coming back. She didn't. They keep calling. She admitted one day, sitting next to me on the back porch. I raised an eyebrow. "So?" She grinned. I don't answer. It was the first time in a long time that she looked truly happy. She had a job now, her son was thriving, and she and Jake were finally planning a life of their own, one that wasn't controlled by our parents. And our grandfather? He was doing better than ever. "I should have moved years ago," he joked one afternoon, sitting in a lawn chair with a drink in his hand. He had been reluctant at first, not wanting to be a burden. But the truth was, he wasn't. He was part of this new life we were all building. He was the only one in our family who had ever truly supported me, and now I finally had a chance to return the favor. One night I got a text message from an unknown number. "Mom, we just want to talk." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't holding on to the bitterness. But I wasn't going to let it back in either. They had made their choice. And I made mine. I turned off my phone and went inside where my real family was. The family I chose. The only one that ever mattered. Update. Life has been good. Better than I ever expected. Work is steady, my grandfather is happier than ever, and Emily and her family are thriving. It still feels surreal sometimes, going from nothing to this. A real home. Stability. A family that actually supports each other. I hadn't thought about my parents in a while. Until last week. I got a call from an old neighbor from my hometown. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but then he said, "Hey, I don't know if you care, but I figured you should know, your parents lost the house." That caught me off guard. Apparently, things were even worse for them than I had realized. The bank foreclosed on the house, and they were forced to move. The neighbor didn't know exactly where they went, just that they left in a hurry. I sat there for a moment, phone in hand, letting it sink in. A part of me felt something. Not pity exactly. More like a strange, distant disbelief. 5 years ago, they thought they were untouchable. They thought they could throw me away and move on without consequences. Now they had nothing. I told Emily about it later that night. She shook her head, not surprised. They did this to themselves, she said. She wasn't wrong. They had a choice. Just like I did. And now, they were living with the consequences of theirs. I didn't ask the neighbor for more details. I didn't try to find out where they went. I just said, "Thanks for letting me know," and moved on.